I carry passengers for hire in the float plane over water most of the time. You have to carry an inflatable life vest for each person on board. Since there's only 2 people on board the Cub, I have to carry 2 life vests, even though both of us that generally fly in the airplane wear a life vest. Now, I never worried about it too much because I was always a good swimmer. I used to swim on Ponderay Lake in the wintertime. I swim for 5-10 miles. I never had any problem swimming, even in cold water. But years ago I realized that I also was responsible for the safety of my passengers and stuff on the airplane, so I started thinking about wearing a vest. And one of the things I learned about going through different safety seminars and survival seminars was that if you do have an accident, an incident or something, whether it's in an airplane or even in a car or boat or whatever, the chances are whatever gear you have on you is what you're going to have to survive with. There's a good chance you might not be able to get into the vehicle or the airplane or whatever to retrieve the survival gear in there, so you kind of have to depend on what you carry with you. Well, I started wearing a Stearns fishing vest, and it's a canvas vest with lots of pockets in it, as well as an inflatable bladder in there. And I've worn that for years with some minimal survival gear in it, matches, things like that, for stuff for signaling and for starting a fire, and a little bit of first aid gear. Well, even though both of us that fly in my airplane most of the time wear vests, they're not FAA approved vests, and I still have to carry the vests in there in the airplane. So I wanted to make a pocket for them to fit them in. I thought I'd make something out of the kydex. So this is what I've got here. This is one of the package's life vests here, and I made a little pocket here for a die, a mold, and then I've got a plug here. I just made a pretty basic one here. Instead of trying to cut out the shape that I wanted, I just took a whole bunch of individual pieces. I took one larger piece, and then I took a whole bunch of smaller individual pieces and just cut them to shape. I measured out the pocket that I wanted in here, the relief with the relief for the kydex, and I just nailed it all up like that, and that'll work pretty good. And then I've got a plug here that I've glued up, and I'm going to take and put a larger flat piece on top of that, so this will be cut with a pretty good sized piece of kydex in here. Hopefully we'll push it down into the mold here and mold our pocket, and then I'll have a piece on top of this there'll be a flange around here to flatten that, and this piece on top will flatten that flange out. Well, I think I'm going to try using my powder coat oven this time to heat the sheet up. So if this turns out well, I'll make 2 of these pockets for the life vests. I'm making a mold for a clipboard holder now. I got a pretty good sized piece of the MDF down there, and I found another small piece I put on here. I had it laid out with the clipboard in there, checking it out. I'm kind of thinking that maybe just 3/4 of an inch pocket for that might not quite be enough. So I went and found some 1/8 inch plywood, and I'm using that for a little filler in there. I just put in there, I dug out a scrap piece of kydex here to put in to make sure I've got enough space in there for the kydex for the form. And then I put one on the other side and started to use it, and then I got kind of thinking, well, maybe I want a little bit more, because this may not be the only clipboard. The clipboards might not be all the same size, so I took all of my rules, four of these rules, and stuck in there to give it a little bit more space. Well, I'll go ahead and rip some pieces of MDF to go up the side here, and I'll put a couple pieces in on the top. Top doesn't really matter too much because that's going to be cut out so that the clipboard can slide in there, but I got the mold done for the clipboard, and I've got the plug done for the clipboard. Go in there like that. I used a little bit of 1/8 inch to expand both of them to get them up over the 3/4 of an inch. And I might have to trim that off just a little bit. It fits in there pretty tight on this end. Side to side, it's okay. I've got my plug form. This is the plug form and the mold form for my kydex projects done. But I may have made a little bit of a mistake. When I've done this before, what I did was made a mold like this, and then I put the kydex sheet on it, and then I put another piece on top of it to kind of hold the kydex down flat. And this time what I had in mind was just taking one of these, this plug, and putting in there with a top piece on it to spread out, to push down on it. And I'm afraid that might cause wrinkles in the thing. But I'm going to try it like this anyway. Now, everything that I've done before, I've done with the heat gun, and I've heated it up and then pushed the mold, the plug down into the mold by hand. And this time I think what I'm going to do, I've set up my powder coating oven, and because I've got the PID unit on there and the solid state relay, I can hold the temperature pretty close on that. And so I've got it heating up right now, and I think what I'm going to do is put this mold in there and put the sheet of kydex on there, and then put the plug on top of it, and then just let it heat up and let it mold itself. The temperature suggested recommendation for the kydex to heat it up to for this 60 thousandths kydex is 167 degrees to 177 degrees. I've got my oven heating up now, and I set the PID unit to 166 degrees. And so I still don't have a box and anything made for this yet. I just don't have time to fool with it right now, or don't want to take the time to fool with this right now, but I can make it work. I've got my box set, my PID set to 166 degrees. I still only have one element working in there, so it takes a little while to get that large chamber heated up. But I'm going to let everything stabilize while I keep working on these forms, these molds. Okay, that didn't turn out very well at all. The pocket come out okay, but I've got a whole bunch of wrinkles and stuff in there. Okay, a new plan here. I've got another board that I cut out, and I cut it out the inside the same shape, size as what my form is here, what my mold is here. And that then the sheet of kydex will lay down on here. This will go over the top of it, lightly clamp down, and that should hold the edges and stuff in position. I don't want them held too tightly because it's got to be able to pull in as it stretches. We don't want it all just to stretch, so it's got to pull in. But this will keep it from puckering and wrinkling on the edges. My piece of kydex that I'd used, I salvaged it. I just put it in the oven and let it heat up, and it just flattened right back out. No, it's just in fine. Just the wrinkles show up on it are just from the baby powder that's on there. So I can reuse this piece on my next test piece, and I don't have to sacrifice one for it. So this is what we're going to try now. I've got the piece of kydex in there on mold, and this top clamp piece, control piece on there, lightly clamped down. Well, we can stick this in the oven now and let it warm up, and then hopefully when we push the plug in there, that will push that down and make the form that we want without having all the edges distorted around there like we did before. Well, that one mold has been in with the kydex, has been in the oven there for about 15 minutes or better now. I'm going to give it a try. Not yet. Almost. put it back in the oven for a little while and see what, I don't know whether it's pulling out. I'm going to loosen up this boards again a little bit. Make sure the kydex can slide. Alright, that one's loose. Okay, I'll make sure that kydex can slide in there in that front. So I'll heat it back up again. It started pulling down on that one end of that, okay, but it didn't work. So we'll flatten that out and start over again. That might just have worked. I just thought I'd give it a try and see. When I put that sheet in there flat on the oven floor to heat it up to flatten it back out after my failed attempt there, and I was going to just put it on the bottom of this mold and put this one on it to let it cool off to harden up and then try it again. I thought, well, it won't hurt anything if I just go ahead and try it. We'll see how that turned out. And that turned out not too bad. Better than my other tries. Got some wrinkles in it here and up here, but otherwise that's not too bad. There we go. Okay. Well, I guess we're going about this wrong. Still don't like those wrinkles there, but one of these sides fronts is going to get cut off for the so that the clipboard can slide down in there. I may be able to and then this will be trimmed off here. Most of this wrinkles will be trimmed off. I may be able to straighten them out just a little bit with the heat gun. Okay, that one's smoothed out. It's still got some pretty good wrinkles here in the corners. Not much you can do about that. That stuff has got to go someplace. Well, anyway, that's better than it was anyhow. Oh, that's ugly. One thing, I need a lot bigger piece. Actually, this one will probably work out fine. I can cut this edge off here, right here, and then this top gets cut off anyway. So that one will probably work out okay. And I can smooth this out a little bit. Okay, here's what this one's for, and that's going to fit in there just right. It's nice and tight, and so it won't pop out of there. So that's going to work okay. So here's my clipboard pouch, and it doesn't look so bad once you get the baby powder off of it. I'm going to cut it off here, somewhere around in this area, So this bad wrinkle here is going to be cut out, but otherwise you got a wrinkle down here. Trued up the edges of it and stuff on the shear. I still got to get them to size and everything, but looks a lot better now. Get that on there, and I'm going to pull it down this way a little bit farther. That's good, and I'm going to clamp the corners of it instead of clamping the middle. Okay, let's give her a go. No, not going to go. Loosen my clamps up a little bit. There it goes. There it goes. No, I lost that one. Try this one again. Okay, so this top's going to be cut off. The sides are pretty much flat. It's just right down here on this bottom that's not. So I'm going to let that cool off. Again, here's my life vest. That'll fit in there just fine. Since we've already done this. No, I didn't get it quite as deep. It's not deep enough. It's got to go deeper than that. No, didn't get it all the way in. Oh, drew that one again. No, it didn't tear. It didn't tear. Come out of there pretty good. That's much better. Okay, I got just the wrinkles down here on the bottom end. Yeah, that's much better. That fits in there now. Okay, that's better. This top will be trimmed off here. That looks pretty good, and this back is actually not too bad. A few wrinkles right across in here, but basically the pocket turned out pretty good. So I'm going to call that one a win finally. I had a little more trouble, actually a lot more trouble with these pouches than I thought I would. It took me 3 or 4 times to finally get this one for the clipboard done. I had to heat it up about 2 or 3 times and flatten it back out and redo it. I used this one. It's got a little more wrinkles in here than I'd like, but I'm going to cut this section off right here for the clipboard to slide in, and then that'll mount up against the side panel like that. These life vest pouches, they turned out to be a real booger. I worked and worked and worked, and I finally got the first one done. I must have redid this one 7 or 8 times before it finally came out right. And even then, it's got more wrinkles in it than I would have liked. And then I did several more of them. This one had some pretty strong wrinkles down here on the bottom, and I put it in the mold and tried to straighten it out, and all it did was flop up, and I couldn't get it down. I finally said to heck with it. I could salvage it probably, but I got another one here, and it wound up being a little tight here on this one side, but we'll work it out. It's got some wrinkles, more wrinkles down here than I would have liked.
Did you get it done better?
Well, this is what I got. No, I didn't get it done any better. These will be okay. I cut them off. This one here had some wrinkles in it. I tried to straighten it out, and it just flipped up and made it worse. And
aww.
so then I tried these, and
they're nice and
easy.
flat, but
they flattened out pretty good, but they didn't.
They
just
tore.
Didn't slide in like it should have, and they tore. This is the last one I did. I tried one last time last night, And,
Almost had it.
And it tore too. It flattened out pretty good, but it tore here in the corners.
Dang.
Well, actually, the tears wouldn't hurt anything. They'd allow any moisture to go through or something, but they just don't.
They look kind of ugly.
So, anyway, that's it. Took me a bunch of times to do it. I take these down to the house and wash them with some dishwasher soap to get all of the baby powder off of them. And then get the bandsaw, cut off the ends of them here, and trim up round over the corners here, and use them the way they are. So I think they'll work. We'll make them work.